You're looking for the latest information on Southern University sports, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and HBCU athletics. There's only one place to go. Tune in to the Carlos Brown Show, exclusively on the Black College Sports Network.
Let's get back to strolling instead of scrolling. Before we can safely come together, we need the facts on COVID-19 vaccines. Visit getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision for yourself and for your fam.
Some carriers will give you just one measly entertainment subscription. One is no fun. With Verizon, there's up to 7 entertainment subscriptions with your unlimited plan. That's 7 times the... 7 times the... No! 7 times the... Yes! Music, gaming, Disney+, Hulu, ESPN+, and more. That's 7 times the entertainment!
Because everyone deserves better.
And with plans starting at just $35, better costs less than you think.
If you think all pads are exactly the same, think again. This is Always Ultra Thins reinvented with the Always Triple Protection System. This pad wicks gushes 90% faster, absorbs even more so you can feel dry, and locks odors in. Rethink your pad for up to 100% leak-free and odor-free comfort with the totally reinvented Always Ultra Thins. This is always like never before.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
At Tyson, we know taste is local. Some like their beef pit smoked, their chicken spiced all the way up, or their pork sweet and saucy. Local flavors, global impact. That's what feeding the world is all about.
This is the BCSN Pod Zone, your place for the news, views, and conversations about all things related to HBCU athletics. Here are the BCSN Sports Wrap, Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, Knights of the Round Table, the pregame show, the Carlos Brown Show, the ONG Strike Zone, and more in one place. We are changing the way you consume HBCU sports, one broadcast at a time.
Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won. Yeah. I hope my team they won. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won. I hope my team they won. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with this hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBC Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Wait 1 minute. Mike Washington is not here. He is on assignment. Still on assignment. We'll talk about that later. None other than we have the pinch hitter, none other than A.D. Drew in the building. So welcome to episode 357 of Inside the HBC Sports Lab radio show and podcast. The show that's covering the sporting HBCU diaspora, all things HBCU sports for institutions large and small, from NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics, facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs in the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta, Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Watch and Charles Bishop. We're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to KCUH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, Ralph Cooper, multi-Hall of Famer, that is, Ralph Cooper, in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. With that being said, Charles Bishop, how you doing this morning?
Doing well, Doc. Yeah, doing well. School has started. We are up and running. The semester is upon us, and we are off and ready and running.
And I'm saying this morning, as if I saw you as you were working out.
Oh, no doubt. The routine is the routine now. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're back in there 4 days a week. So.
Yeah, got to get it in. With that being said, AD Drew, how you doing today?
I would be remiss, Dr. Cavil, if I didn't start this show off right with a couple of happy birthdays. Those happy birthdays include my mother, who is still alive and kicking, and my little brother, who was also born on this same day, January 17th. So
that's pretty cool.
One born 19 and one born after me. So I'll just put it at like that. So my brother's an 80s child. So
let me say that as well. Happy birthday to your mom as well as your brother. Good deal.
Appreciate that. They definitely appreciate it. First thing I did this morning was shoot them the impersonal text that we do now to wish them happy birthday. Still haven't had a chance to make the phone call because of their work schedule, but at least I did shoot them a text this morning, so they can't say, "God, dog, you forgot about us again." I know you don't live here in the same city with us no more, but you are still part of the family. This ain't like we actually come home for the family reunion.
Yeah. You better send texts, cards, phone calls. You got to do what's necessary. But yeah, text is appropriate time. At least you get the point out there. I wanted to start with this. I know there's been a lot of talk, obviously, with Ed Reed's comments, but I'm not going to go into that. There's been plenty of talk about that, and I've been on other platforms to share different information. So I don't want to cultivate the time here to do that. But there's always another way you can look at things. And in this case, Eddie George, he does provide his comments on Ed Reed. He talks about determination. Quote, to see change happen, end quote, at Tennessee State. This is courtesy of HBCUsports.com. Won't go through the entire article, but there's some good points in there if you want to read that article. Obviously, go to HBCUsports.com. And he talks about the fact that he was interviewed on Rise and Grind podcast. And he was asked a question, obviously, about Ed Reed, the Pro Football Hall of Famer that's at Bethune-Cookman, soon to be coach, depending on who you're listening to regarding the signature on a dotted line. There might be some questions back and forth where he is literally in regards to that framework. But with that being said, more importantly, what George said, one of the things he talked about, and it's frustrating. He didn't understand exactly what he was getting into himself. George said from his perspective, and when you get under the hood and you really see what's going on and you don't see the mold in the apartments, you don't see the mold in the dorms, you see the facilities, the locker room is not the best. It's not clean. It's all those things. But guess what? That's why you are there. And I chose to do it through action. And so it's interesting that he brings it up. He also talks about, I choose to do it through, let me roll up my sleeves and get in front of the people, corporations, the schools, presidents, the politicians, and say basically what we are doing, end quote. So it's fascinating just to see that you have juxtaposed with people with different perspectives, different positions. How do they go about businesses? And at the end of the day, we'll see, at least if you're measured by your record, we'll see what that looks like. You'll also get a chance to see at some point college athletes, how they speak about coach. You always hear in different platforms, different types of affinity for coaches in various ways. So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. And so I just wanted to bring that to the table, just to spin it off in a different platform. A lot of people appreciated because he went in and talked about what a lot of people often talk about is the funds and the deprivation of funds that I talk about in my research. One of the ways I have my platforms, and he reports that the state may owe the school $150 million to $544 million in land grant funding that has never been paid. And so one of his goals was to help the institution in terms of getting that money. That is owed to them based on records that people have described. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, at least for state institutions, is a reoccurrence in regards to understanding that resources have not been allocated to these institutions as they should over a period of time. But I thought it was fascinating just to see a different perspective of how you could go about the business of leading young people at an institution, any source, but this particular case, HBCU sports. With that being said, I'm gonna go to you, Charles, for some other news of the day. What do you have on your mind that you want to share?
Sure. Let's start off with the SWAC Women's Basketball Weekly Honors for this past week, January 17th. SWAC has tabbed Texas Southern's Adriana Abent and Florida A&M's Dylan Horton for the SWAC Women's Basketball Weekly Honors for their outstanding performances this past week. Let's take a look at Adriana Abent, as she was a key contributor to the Texas Southern Lady Tigers this past week. She averaged 21 points per game while shooting 38% from behind the three-point arc. She shot an impressive 86% from the free throw line. Also contributed 3 rebounds and 2 steals per game during this past week of competition. The Impact Player of the Week was Dylan Horton. She averaged 20 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists. She crossed 2 league contests. FAMU this past week, she shot 50% from the field against UAPB and Mississippi Valley State. She poured in a game high 21 points against UAPB this past Saturday, and she followed that with a game high 19 points during the Rattlers' 69-53 win over Mississippi Valley State this past Monday. So those were your SWAC Women's Basketball Weekly Honors.
Damn, you getting the win. I see you Rattlers out there getting it done. On the women's side, great accolades for all those players of the week. Drew, what direction you want to go with some news of the day?
I want to go off script for a minute, Dr. Cavil. I want to go to something that happened today, and that was the CIAA basketball press conference. It occurred about 3 o'clock or so today, Eastern time, held in Baltimore. They did a unique thing. They had a press conference and free throw showdown. We're not gonna get into the free throw shooting because we know all of everybody could be have some little work for the charity strike. But I do want to get into some of the highlights of this, and I'm quoting part of this from CIAA.com, and also I'll throw in my thoughts from actually watching the press conference live. But from CIAA.com, as the country celebrates the 50th anniversary of Title IX civil rights law, the conference is proud to be one of the few conference tournaments to feature both male and female competition during the same week and at the same facility. It also boasts the first female commissioner of the CIAA and the first ever appointed African-American female commissioner in the NCAA across Division I, Division II, Division III. CIAA Commissioner Jackie McWilliams, a 2-sport star athlete at Hampton University. And it goes on to tell a little bit about her personal accolades. But one of the things that I thought that was going to be interesting about this as they celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Title IX is on Championship Saturday, they are going to flip the order of the championship game. Traditionally, the women play before the men. Traditionally, the women's crowd is not as big as the men's crowd because they play first. So this particular year, the men will play first, followed by the women, to get the people in the house to be able to highlight the women and the athleticism of the women's play in basketball. And it goes on to talk about some of the other things, impact in the Baltimore community. 2022 tournament was a smashing success with both the Baltimore community economically and culturally, with over, check this, 66,000 attendees over the 22 games of the tournament. And let's talk dollars and cents, because this is the business of HBCU sports. Economic direct spending of $13.9 million and total economic impact of $19.6 million, which supported 1,159 part-time and full-time jobs and generated $1.9 million in local sales tax. I'll leave it right there for you guys to digest that.
I like you added that money piece in there. The business of sports, it holds true. Charles, what else you got on your mind?
Yeah, let's take a look at the MEAC as they announced their weekly men's basketball honors. MEAC weekly honors presented by Coca-Cola. Let's take a look. Senior guard Isaiah Burke of Morgan State was named the MEAC Men's Basketball Player of the Week, as well as Howard University's Shai Odom. He was named the Rookie of the Week, and the senior guard Malik Miller of Morgan State was announced as the Defensive Player of the Week. Let's take a look at Isaiah Burke. He recorded his second straight, Dr. Bill, 30-point game in Saturday's win over their rival Coppin State. We talked about that battle of Baltimore. He dropped 30 after hitting 5 3-pointers and going 15-18 from the free throw line. He also had 2 assists on a block shot. Take a look at Shai Odom for Howard University. He averaged 11.5 points, 5 rebounds in 2 games for the Bison, going to combine 6, 14, 43% from the floor. He opened with 15 points and 7 rebounds against Norfolk State before adding 8 points in the win over Morehouse. And Malik Miller of Morgan State, Defensive Player of the Week, grabbed a career high, get this, 19 rebounds, including 17 on the defensive end against Coppin State, while also notching 3 steals to help keep the Bears undefeated in MEAC conference play. He also had 16 points for his 8th double-double of the season to go along with 5 assists. So those are your players of the week in the MEAC on the men's side.
Look at the MEAC getting it done. Yeah, we'll get in there and we'll see what the major division looks for the men's and women's. We'll do that in the second segment. So I'm glad you brought up those accolades, because we'll see how it ties in with where teams are ranked and what does it look like. But before we do that, I did want to talk about all the love that FIF's gymnastics program is getting out there, well-deserved. You have Talladega College out of the same conference, Gulf Coast Athletic Conference, that is, with Brown Girls Do Gymnastics, partner for second HBCU women's gymnastics program coming out of TalladagaCollege.edu. Brown Girls Do Gymnastics, BGDG, and Talladega College have partnered with the HBCU Gymnastics Alliance to launch the college's first ever women's artistic gymnastics team. The partnership was unveiled during the HBCU Gymnastics Alliance collaboration on Saturday, January 14th in Atlanta, Georgia. Talladega College will join Fisk University, which has also partnered with BGDG and the HBCU Gymnastics Alliance in developing the only HBCU women's artistic gymnastics program in the nation. Quote, this historic moment will have a lasting impact, establish a women's gymnastic team at Talladega College, will expand opportunities for HBCU student athletes to compete in a rewarding sport that fosters discipline, confidence, and success, end quote, to Talladega College President Gregory J. Vincent. Quote, developing our first ever women's gymnastic team will also promote student and alumni engagement and pride, enhance the college brands, and help create a pipeline to diverse gymnastics, end quote. It'll be fascinating to see this build out and this momentum. Obviously, a lot of great attention to Fisk University, and now it looks like Talladega wants some of that as well. So I'm celebrating that. Before we get in there, obviously we talk a little bit more about the mid-major polls, which is Division II, includes CIAA, SIAC, and those independents, as well as NAIA programs. But Lonnie Blow had a question in regards to CIAA. The tournament contract in Baltimore ends in 2025, so he wants to know where it's going in 2026. I think a little bit about that. He said later that the tournament belongs in Charlotte, not Baltimore. So I think that's part of his excitement about that. Usually what you find out When tournaments do a bidding on it, they go a year before. 2024 is usually when you start seeing the bid process about what that looks like. You had something to add to that?
They did address that during a press conference. The contract was actually supposed to end in 2023. They just signed a 2-year extension to extend it out to 2025. So they've already done their first re-up of the tournament in the Baltimore area. So they're kicking that can down the road for a couple of years. Who was that? Lonnie Below, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of that is usually because they're pretty happy with what took place, want to germinate the root, so it'll be interesting to see. So he got a little time. He did talk about 2026. So he understood that it goes to 25, which is part of the extension you mentioned. But you won't hear anything in 2024 unless, like you just announced, they decide to re-up it even sooner. So Charlotte has to wait before they get out there and get a chance to put their bid in, hopefully put their money where their mouth is, such it can be done right if it does happen to go back to Charlotte. With that said, let's take our first break. We'll be back on the other side so we get into the poll rankings. A lot of good action this past weekend. A lot of good action. I got some stats to kind of tease you with to let you know just how great the action has been in the SWAC, particularly on the men's side. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break.
Support the Black College Sports Network so we can continue to provide you coverage. Go to myjbn.com/support and be a part of the Black College Sports Network.
Let's get back to getting ticks instead of watching flicks. Before we can safely get out there, we need the facts on COVID-19 vaccines. Visit getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision for yourself and for your crew.
Charmin Ultra Soft has so much cushiony softness, it's hard for your family to remember they can use less.
Sweet pillows of softness.
This is soft.
Holy Charmin. Oh, excuse me. Roll it back, everybody.
Sorry.
Charmin Ultra Soft is so cushiony soft, you'll want more, but it's so absorbent, you can use less, so it's always worth it.
Now, what did we learn about using less?
You gotta roll it back, everybody.
We all go. Why not enjoy the go with Charmin?
Maureen is saving big holiday shopping at Amazon, so now she's free to become Maureen the Merrier. Food is her love language, and she really loves her grandson. Like, really loves.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties. Through its programs, Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and Parenting Education Coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentjax.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Mike is out on assignment, so we have none other than A.D. Drew. Let's get into these poll rankings. We got some teams that changed around. Got some teams that dropped out on the women's side, at least one. So somebody's going to jump in this poll, and we'll tell you who it is. But since somebody is jumping in, that means somebody fell out. Who dropped out of the poll this week was none other than Howard Bison. The ladies had a tough one this past week as they fall to 6-10, 2-1 in the conference race, as they couldn't get it done this week. Losing to Norfolk State, that just dominating fashion. 64-37 was the score. So we'll have to see if Howard Bison can climb their way back into it, but they fall out at this time. Receiving votes, though, just on the outside is a trio of SWAC institutions. Starting at the bottom is none other than Bethune-Cookman Wildcats. 5-10, 4-1, 14. Surprising some folks as they got off to a pretty hot start. Alabama A&M Bulldogs 69, 4-1 with 20 points on there. And then you got the Southern Jaguars that are 79 and 4-1 as they get a big win over their rival, if you would. Grambling at home getting it done, much like the men. We'll get a chance maybe to talk about that a little later, but let's get into these top 5 programs. Beginning at number 5, which is a team that jumps into the poll for the first time this year in week number 2. That's Prairie View A&M Panthers, 8-9, 4-1. 68 points were not ranked. They got the big upset, upsetting Jackson State at home. They went down to the wire, but they get it done. So with the victory and who it was against, it votes them up into the poll, taking us to number 4, which is Jackson State Tigers sitting at 78, 4-1. They fall a spot, not enough to overtake or Prairie View to overtake them, but they fall out of that with 81 points. They come back after that tough loss and really beat up on Texas Southern as if they were mad about the loss in Prairie View. They seem to take it out on the Tigers. It's pretty cool as that lead got up to 40 points. Texas Southern kept fighting to their credit and melted it back down to pretty much a 30-point game range when you talk about what took place there, which was tough in terms of those matchups, how everything was going in that setting for Texas Southern that lost 87-58 in that matchup. Bringing us to number 3, North Carolina A&T State Aggies. They were rolling in conference play in the Colonial. They hit a little buzzsaw, so they fall to 11-6, 5-1, which drops them a spot in the poll. Still 86 solid. They still are in good shape when you talk about the conference race because the other team that was undefeated in the race also lost as well. So they're still grinding for that top spot in terms of the matchup that will come up in a couple of weeks. Bringing us to number 2. Number 2 on the race is none other than Morgan State Bears. Morgan State Bears receives 1 first place vote, 9-6, 2-0 in the conference race as they get it done. They beat Cobbin State, their rival. They're 61-46. So the Bears, Morgan State women program down there are playing really good basketball. The ladies are getting it done. 1 first place votes, 101 points. They move up 2 spots, jump over a couple of teams as they continue to roll and get it done. Bringing us to number 1. This should not be a surprise to anybody. This is Norfolk State, 15-3, 3-0, 7 first place votes. So they increase the first place votes, 116 points as they are getting it done. They defeat Howard, as we talked about earlier, that dropped out of the poll. That was because Norfolk State put a thumping on them, 64-37. They are rolling and getting it done. Credit to Norfolk State in terms of what they're getting done. That'll bring it to the top 5 programs. Let me go to you, Charles. What do you think about the top 5 teams in the list? You have 2 out of the 2 out of the SWAC, and 1.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you start taking a look at the MEAC teams, especially Norfolk State and Morgan State, right there at the top of the frame. But kudos go to Prairie View. That was a huge win, knocking off Jackson State at home, ended that long SWAC win streak that Jackson State had in conference. But when you take a look at this Prairie View team, they're a dangerous team. They're the number 1 scoring team in the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and they've won 5 in a row. So I tell you what, AD, I have no issues whatsoever with regards to this poll. It looks like Doc has it right on track here. We wait to pull him back up here.
Looks like we lost Doc there for a second, Charles, but I'll go ahead and get into my thoughts on the polls. Obviously, number 1, no debate about number 1.
No debate on Norfolk State, yeah.
Right. Right now, it's about who is the next best. Black College Sports Network had number 2 and number 3 flip-flop. We had North Carolina A&T number 2 and Morgan State number 3. And you can make an argument either way for those, North Carolina A&T State have suffered their first conference loss this week on Sunday, looking good over there in the CAA conference. So we could go and we could debate that. I'm pretty sure we could debate that either direction between Morgan State, who's undefeated in the MEAC, and 1 loss North Carolina A&T. Number 4, we were all consistent. Jackson State's number 4. Number 5, though, we gave a little props to Bethune-Cookman with their 3-0 conference record there. So Bethune-Cookman got a little bit of love from us ahead of Prairie View. So just wanted to throw that out there as something to something to watch there, Charles.
When you look back over the weekend, were there any surprises when you take a look at the SWAC and MEAC, or things that caught your eye between Saturday and Monday?
Well, let's start off with the obvious surprise. Jackson State. Jackson State going down. I figured, Charles, if they would lose at any point in time, it would be game 2 of a 2-game road swing. Especially that Texas road swing would be the one that they would lose. Because we all know that Texas 2-step is always hard. But I figured maybe game 2 of the road trip, not game 1 of the road trip. Because you figure you're focused, you're excited coming off campus. And then after being away from campus in the hotel, sometimes you get a little tired, you get a little out of your normal routine. So that was the game. But, boy, as you can see, you do not want to be the team that played Jackson State after a loss. And no offense, that game was not HBCU goal worthy, except if you are a Jackson State fan, because that was not a competitive game from the moment they threw the ball up in the air, Charles. And I know you're sitting over there gloating. So you're looking through clouded lenses, but for the rest of us who were watching and called ourselves getting ready to flip back and forth between that game and the Howard Morehouse game, where after about the first half of the Howard Morehouse game, neither one of those games hit on about that. We had to wait till the men's game to find some competitive basketball on yesterday, my brother.
No, yeah, I mean you make a point. No clouded lenses, and I give props to Prairie View. That was a great win this past Saturday over Jackson State. And I've said this often enough. Going down to Prairie View, that is one of the more intimidating home courts, I believe, in all of the conference. I mean, I've seen more teams go down there and take one on the chin than I can that I can't believe. I mean, it is just a tough place. And then when you talk about Byron Scott and Sandy Pugh, both down there at Prairie View, their teams night in, night out are ready to play.
Yeah, good stuff when you talk about what's going on with those programs, top rankings there. Fascinating when you talk about how they match up when Jackson was bouncing back, and I agree with you. You're just sitting up in the stands, and you're just like, wow, this is tough. But you can see how focused they were. What was really cool after the game, though, that I appreciated is, and you see this at times when you get to really follow these games and interview coaches, some of the ladies on the teams, men as well, in regards to what's going on and how much fun many of the players and teams have together with one another, how they enjoy messing with fans, and oftentimes alumni come in there and get to talk with them and support them. Looking at that cultural connection, supporting the men's program, and then you see the engagement with the coaches. Is always fascinating to see what it looks like. So I want to just get a shout out. That goes for a lot of the teams, but particularly got into it with Jackson State is they were having fun, listening to music, talking to each other, just getting it done as the game wore on. But you're exactly right. It was a tough one to watch because you just seen it so methodological about just how they went through it. I mean, at one point you thought it was a little bit of the game. You was like, oh man, something's going to happen. All of a sudden, 15, 18. You look back up and you be like, man, it's 27, 30, 35.
I was
disappointed. I thought they were going to hit 100 after the third quarter score. I thought they was getting ready to hit 100. I really did. The way that they was just pouring it on them and would not let off of them. I'm like, poor Texas Southern. You do not want to be on the back end of that loss. They would not lose 2 in a row and leave it in doubt. I'm sorry, Charles.
Yeah, you said it right.
It was impressive. It was impressive. Yeah.
Well, let's get into our second break. we go to halftime and come back into the third quarter, second half, and we'll get into the men's side, the top 10, top 5 programs, I should say, on the men's side, maybe to see what you think there. A couple of teams, a lot of change. I can give you a heads up. 2 teams fell out of the top 5. Some major changes. We'll see what it looks like when we get back outside of this break.
Your ad could be ran here. MyJBN.com/support. MyJBN.com/support for more information.
The new GMC Sierra with hands-free driving offers the most advanced and luxurious pickup in its class. Yeah, it rocks.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Supermarket sushi, really?
No. Wait, Troy, you work here?
I'm never not working. Like Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology, up to 100% dandruff protection, even between washes.
Never not working, huh?
Oh, Troy, you're such a good teacher.
Yeah, I know. Never not working. Never not working. Never ever not working.
Are you serious?
Never not working. Dandruff protection that's never not working. Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
That wasn't one.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil, inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Charles and AD Drew. With that being said, let's get into the top 5 programs. As I told you, we had 2 teams that fall out of the poll, which means 2 teams are jumping in. But let's start with those teams falling out. None other than Tennessee State Tigers, 10-9, 2-4. They're on a skid in the OVC, not in the wrong direction as you're sliding down. They had 2 tough losses, one to UT Martin, as they were not quite getting it done. Talking about a tough loss, Grambling State Tigers at 10-7, they fall to 3-2. They lose against their rival on the road. Not so much that they fell on, it was only one game, but the other teams behind them had a couple of big victories that put them in the march, if you would, up into the top 5. So that means who's receiving votes? Who's least close into that top 5? What is it looking like? Let's start with Tennessee State Tigers. They're still in the hunt to get in the top 5, but they're one of the bottom 4 teams that are getting votes here. That is 10-9, 2-4, as we said. Maryland at Eastern Shore with the big victory over Howard that is looking better by the day. They're at 9-8. That was the first weekend in terms of what they got done, but they continue to win as they got another win this past weekend over Delaware State. 9-8, 2-1, 23 points in terms of them getting it done. Maryland Eastern Shore just got over Delaware State, 68-66, playing tough defense, putting up some points in this game, but they are receiving votes. We'll see if they can continue to get it done as they get into the heart of the conference matter. Alcorn State Braves, 7-10, 4-1. They're rolling now. Just lost to Jackson State, but they've bounced back with 4 straight. It puts them in the mix as they're receiving votes. Grambling State Tigers sit at 10-7, 3-2, 35 points as they are just outside of the 5. Let's get in those top 5 programs and see what you think about these teams getting in there. We're starting with number 5, the team that jumped into the poll. It's Howard Bison, 10-10 on the season, 2-1. They're rolling, 1 first place vote. 69 points were not ranked. They got the win, the major upset of Norfolk State. Buzzer beater, somewhat of a controversial song. It took a technical foul. Yes, technical foul was the difference in the game. If you didn't hear about it, go to Sunday night and check out A.D. Drew and Byron, how they break it down. A.D. Drew's a referee, so he goes into it. So we won't do a lot of it here. But essentially, it was the right call. Question I had, was it 2 shots? Update to the technical rules did say it was 2 shots, so he was correct on that too. Drew was rolling with money. I did put in this point. I think at the Power 5 level, and I've seen them do it, they would have act like they needed to check the time on the clock to get it right because they know it's a big shot. All the eyes on television, which means they wouldn't have had to call a technical foul and checked it out. And he called that mastery in terms of refereeing. And so if you hadn't checked it out, heard about all that news and just want out of it, go check out Sports Rap because they do an excellent job of breaking it down. Enough of that. Let me get back to my top 5. Let's go to number 4. North Carolina Central Eagles bounced back with a win. 9-8, 2-1, 1 first place vote, 7-7, and they were not ranked. At number 3, I won't even spend a lot of time on North Carolina Central because I see Charles already questioned. What? Morgan State Bears at 9-8, 3-0, 2 first place vote, 96 points, running at number 4. At number 2, Norfolk State Spartans at 12-6, 2-1. With the loss, it dropped them down to number 1. 3 first place votes, so they're right there, 100 points. They moved down from number 1. All the way up for number 5, a new number 1 this week, Southern Jaguars. They're rolling. They've won 5 straight in conference, 9-9. 4 first place votes, 111 points. Previously ranked 5. They get it done over their rival Grambling State. And they've had 2 big road wins, including Prairie View that's in the mix. Tough rival. They beat Texas Southern. They do beat it on the buzzer. And they get Grambling that was playing some pretty good basketball. They had solid wins, 5-0, 9-9 on the season. So they're number 1. I'm going to make Charles wait since he got that smug look on his face. I'm going to go to A.D. Drew. Drew, what do you think about the top 5?
And we are on the men's side, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
All right. Take a look at the top 5 on the men's side. First of all, I'm going to compare yours to the BCSN top 5.
I like that. Okay, let's do some comparison. See how much y'all are off.
Well, number one were the same. Both have Southern. Both have Southern.
I knew y'all knew what y'all were doing. That's what I was saying.
We got 2 and 3 flip flop. We've got Morgan State.
We'll take that.
Slightly ahead of Norfolk State, with Morgan being undefeated in conference right now. Norfolk State suffered their first conference loss. So we had those 2 flip flop. Number 4, we agree with you. We had Central number 4, and number 5. We actually had Grambling still sitting in our top 5 ahead of Howard.
I have them at 6, just outside. So I agree with that. That looks good.
But just to let you know what we did have out. We had Howard sitting at 8 behind Maryland Eastern Shore and Alcorn. And reason Alcorn and Maryland Eastern Shore were up a little bit ahead of Howard, Eastern Shore, and Alcorn both have good conference records also. So that kind of, and when I say ahead of the margin was ever so slight. So it was slight, but Maryland Eastern Shore, Alcorn, and Howard though is how I graded out on the Black College Sports Network side.
I like the way y'all think.
Tell you how significant that Howard win was to me, because I had them up a little bit higher. For them to go into the monster that is Norfolk State on their home court and get that W, that was major.
They were down like 16 points at the point too.
Yeah, they halted Norfolk State's 19-game home win streak. We had a lot of streaks that were broken this weekend. Prairie View knocked off Jackson State's women that broke a SWAC home win streak. I believe there was a couple of other streaks that got wiped out.
Union and whoever Union played, because Union stopped somebody's streak. That
Virginia State.
Was all right, because I know Union had their streak broken by Fayetteville, and then they broke Virginia State's streak.
Yeah, so I mean that was huge to me. So Marcus Dockery, 24 points in that game against Norfolk State. So that's a big win. I can't argue. Probably Southern is playing the best basketball right now, and they get up and down. They can score. That was a big win over Grambling to me, even though the win was at home. But Grambling is a tough basketball team that I think you're going to hear from, especially later on in the season. We saw what they did in non-conference schedule. That's a tough basketball team. And, I have to say this, Jackson State came in, Texas two-step, came away with 2 L's. So huge win for Texas Southern last night in terms of getting that win, getting off the schneid, because we have to keep in mind Texas Southern was predicted to be number 1 this season, and they hadn't won a conference game as of yet. So huge win for Texas Southern. And let me give a shout out to Maryland Eastern Shore. Huge win over Delaware State. They're 7-0 at home this season. That's the first time since 1996 that they've started off 7-0 at home. So that's huge. Huge for Maryland Eastern Shore. They are deserving to be in the top 5.
Man, look at Charles dropping little nuggets. That's pretty good stuff right there. But you didn't answer. How high would you have Howard? You said you would have had him a little higher. How high would you have?
I probably had Howard. I would have had him up near at 3.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
See, that's why we use computer to take that bias out of ours.
Good stuff. We'll come back on the other side, talk about some of the matchups to look for this week as we get into it. Then I'm going to drop some nuggets just about how competitive the SWAC has been thus far this season. It's going to be interesting. You're about a quarter of the way through things already as we move through the season, really about a third, but it'll be interesting to see as you have the first half coming to a close with some of these final road trips. Can we get some separation? Both on the men's and women's side, it'll be interesting. MEAC can get in the meat of some things, so it'll be fascinating to see if you're going to get some separation there as well. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break, and we'll talk about some of these key matchups coming up this weekend, as well as on Monday for both the SWAC and the MEAC. We'll take a little look outside and see what's going on in the Colonial in terms of key matchups that they have, as well as OVC, Tennessee State, to see if they can get things rolling back in the correct direction. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break.
Thank you guys for what you do for HBCU athletics. This is a fantastic avenue for all of us. This is our ESPN, so we love what you guys do. Brian, AD, Roy, all you guys at BCSN. We really appreciate what it is that you guys do for us.
We'll be there soon.
Me? Is this the one?
Well, let's say I found the one who takes me to another level. Always stays calm under pressure. Most importantly, the one that helps me discover the coolest places.
This sounds wonderful.
Come outside, I'll introduce you.
They're here.
Definitely the one.
Introducing the all-new Nissan Frontier.
At CDW, we get speed as the new currency of success.
Our team spends way too much time tending to outdated applications and software when they should be focused on driving application agility and innovation.
CDW Amplify Development Services modernizes software and application development to help accelerate innovation and digital transformation.
So you mean building new applications, UI, and mobile interfaces?
Well, you said you needed to innovate more quickly.
Oh, so he's a listener.
To do more at scale, trust CDW Amplify Development Services.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Professor Bishop, Professor Drew, Clinical Professor Drew in the building, getting it done. Let's get into some of these matchups. I'm gonna start with the OVC. Tennessee State has 2 this week. They're at home, see if they can bounce back. It's always better to play at home than on the road, it seems. And they played decently there and played pretty well, actually, this season. We'll see what it does. They play Eastern Illinois that comes in at 7-12 overall in terms of what they're looking at. But Eastern Illinois is just 3-3 in terms of the conference race. That is on Thursday. Then on Saturday, they hit the road and they go to Little Rock as they're facing a Little Rock team that is 5-14 overall, and at the bottom of the OVC 1-5. So these are some games. If you want to at least get back in the race, you got to find a way to get both of these games. Certainly the one at home, then find a way to get it done on the road against Little Rock. Let's go into the Colonial. Talk about some of these matchups here as North Carolina A&T is looking at what they want to do in terms of the conference race with a couple of matchups coming up this weekend. As they're also doing that Thursday and Saturday matchup. You have Hampton at Drexel. That Drexel is 10-8 in terms of what they're doing in the conference. So Hampton goes on the road, but you have A&T at home hosting Townsend. Townsend comes in with the winning record, 12-7 overall. When you talk about the Drexel, they're at 4-2 in the conference race, while Townsend is 4-2 also in the conference race with their 12-7 record. So it'll be interesting to see what both of these teams are able to do in terms of those matchups on Thursday. Then on Saturday, A&T goes to William & Mary. William & Mary is just 8-11, and then Hampton travels to Monmouth that is just 1-17. So certainly Hampton looks to get right in terms of at least one of these matchups, if not both. So it'll be fascinating to see what's going on there. Anything from you, Charles, in terms of these non-conference independent programs? A&T still seems to be playing the best ball of those two. Tennessee State is hitting a little bit of a hard time, even though they have the winning record overall.
Yeah, Tennessee State swell is the one that kind of concerns me a little bit. But like you said, A&T is playing some great basketball right now. But home cooking is always a good thing. So we'll see what Tennessee State can do at the Gentry Center this weekend.
What about your thoughts, Eddie Drew, on any one of those teams?
I need Tennessee State to get some consistency. You know, they did good non-conference since they've gotten into conference. Win one, lose one, win one, lose one, win one, lose one.
Another Tennessee State season. Yeah.
You know, especially at home, I need them to sweep a series at home. And then maybe we can build some momentum and do something in the OVC. That's what I'm looking for out of Tennessee State.
It's interesting. Obviously, it didn't follow the Colonial previous to this. You've seen this in the Big South where traditionally in the MEAC and SWAC, you know, you have the home series where you play 2 games on home and essentially the next week you go 2 games on the road unless you play your rival which could be a home and away depending on that series. So sometimes you get 3 at home and 1 away. In the OVC, in the Colonial, what I'm seeing is they do this, split games, obviously. They tend to do Thursday and Saturday instead of the Saturday and Monday, but they split it up. They'll get 1 at home, then your second game will be on the road, or vice versa. Your first game on Thursday is on the road, and then your Saturday game is at home. So it's interesting to see that I hadn't followed that before. And OVC, previous to a lot of the teams leaving due to churn, they used to do the same format where they would get Thursday, Saturday games at home or Thursday, Saturday games on the road. So to see them flip it, I'm intrigued to see what that looks like and what that means for the consistency there. With that being said, let's get into the MEAC. They have a pair this week. Last week, they only played essentially the Saturday game as they stretched things out. Martin Luther King holiday. You did see Howard take on Morehouse for that matchup that was very good in terms of television. A lot of pomp and circumstances, as you imagine it should be in terms of celebration of Martin Luther King and his contributions to our society in terms of Dr. King's holiday. With that being said, this week, though.
Any word on the ratings on that game yet?
I hadn't seen them yet. I'm looking for that as well. Great point. Probably see it a little later tonight or first thing in the morning in terms of what that looks like. Should be fascinating to see. Obviously, you do have the fact that you have them up against it's an hour difference, though. So it could be the Monday Night Football with the Cowboys playing, which is obviously a big matchup, and then Tampa with Tom Brady. So it's fascinating to see there. See what that looks like in terms of that matchup. And you're starting to see this with the MEAC too. They're playing the same format where you get 1 at home and 1 on the road. So check this out. Saturday, you have Morgan at Howard. Big time matchup here. Morgan State comes in at 9-8. Howard at 10-10. This is a top 5 matchup according to the rankings that are released today on the men's side. Interesting to see what that looks like on the women's side. Morgan State top 5 program. Howard has fell off a little bit after being at the top of the mountain just a couple of years ago. Then you have Eastern Shore at South Carolina State. Eastern Shore would like to continue to make a statement. They're 9-8, 3-16. When you look at the men's side of South Carolina State, struggling some. And then you have Delaware State at North Carolina Central in terms of that matchup. Then you have Norfolk State looking to see if they can bounce back at 12-6, going up against Coppin State 6-14. That is another one of those teams similar to Tennessee State. Non-conference wise, pretty solid in a lot of ways. But in conference race, they've been kind of up and down. So it'll be interesting to see what this matchups look like. I'll go to you, Drew. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Saturday, both on the men's and the women's side, you're just looking for teams to hold chalk because all of these games have a clear-cut favorite, for lack of a better word, in those particular matchups. So you just want to see if everybody can hold chalk on Saturday. And but you talk about the schedule, not doing the 2 games. For the MEAC, especially that Northeast corridor, it's a little bit easier with them because the travel for those teams up there is so easy, Dr. Cavil. A lot of them are right off of I-95. I-95, get off, you can go to the right, go to the left, and you had a lot of these schools for those. So for those teams, those 5-6 teams up north, so it's a heck of a lot easier, And then of course, if you got Central and South Carolina State, travel is easy between those two. It's kind of when they have to mix and match and go to that DMV or Baltimore area and vice versa. That's when it gets a little tough, especially on those bus rides.
Good point. Charles, what are your thoughts on this Morgan State at Howard? Then turn around, I want to tease you with this one a little bit. You got Norfolk State and Morgan State on Monday. Morgan State is the home team.
That's going to be the one.
Those are the Morgan State games are the ones that intrigue me because Morgan State has 3 games in 5 days. You take a look at it, they have a midweek game tomorrow. They have Hartford coming into Morgan State. But again, like you said, Morgan State at Howard, that one's going to be a huge game. But then just as huge as that is, Norfolk State comes to Morgan State on a Monday. But check this out. Morgan State thus far 6-0 at home. That jumps out at me. Other team that's also undefeated at home, Maryland Eastern Shore. They're 7-0 thus far. And then North Carolina Central, they protect home court as well. They're 8-0 at home. And then take a look at Norfolk State, they're 6-1. So you got 3 out of the top 4 teams that they protect home court very well. So anytime those teams are playing at the crib, if you will, that I'm going to start leaning in their direction since they hold home court, if you will.
Ooh, you lean in the direction Morgan State over Norfolk State?
Yeah, I am.
Woo!
Yeah, I am.
I heard it here first.
Hey, they got a couple scores, Dr. Phil. They got a couple scores.
That's true. They're good. I mean, I'm not saying that they can't happen, but you saying this live on here, that's one kind that you kind of peek out there and say later. I thought they might. No, I get you. That's what we hire you for, to make sure that you put it out there and let folks consider it. Let's get into the into the SWAC and see some of these matchups as we getting into this. Teams are getting into the conference, so we're starting to feel what teams look like, maybe. On the men's side, when you talk about Bethune-Cookman at Jackson State, FAMU at Alcorn State, Texas Southern at Alabama A&M. So you got the Texas schools doing that long road trip. Prairie View at Alabama State. You got Southern at Arkansas Pine Bluff. 2 teams that are playing really well. That's one that quietly keep your eyes on. You have Grambling in terms of going to Mississippi Valley State in terms of that matchup. Sticking with you, Charles, what are your thoughts in terms of what's going on here in terms of this matchup as you look at it? The TV games for HBCU go this weekend are Bethune-Cookman at Jackson State and Prairie View at Alabama A&M on that Monday. So you got the Saturday game, doubleheader of men and women, Bethune-Cookman at Jackson State. Bethune-Cookman women are playing pretty well as well, something to keep your eyes on. Charles, what do you see in terms of these matchups here?
Give me the matchup again. Southern is where?
Southern is Arkansas Pine Bluff. Both good to me, men's and women's. That's a tough one. Pine Bluff, as you alluded to, that's a tough place to play that people don't always recognize, even when they're not playing it well. Right now, on the men's side, they're playing really well, and the women are still tough. They're out a player or two, but they're still hanging in there playing tough with Southern. So I'm interested in that matchup. It seems like you are as well.
Yeah, that Southern Arkansas Pine Bluff is a very interesting matchup to me. They have one of the top scorers in the conference, Sean Doss. Sean Doss is averaging 16 points a game. So if he gets hot, then you mentioned, we talked a little bit about it this morning, they got bench production this past weekend for Arkansas Pine Bluff. So that Southern Arkansas Pine Bluff game is the one that jumps out for me in the SWAC this weekend.
Yeah, you talk about that bench production in terms of what they were able to do. Doss only had 10. They had bench production by Harris and Milton, 20 and 18 respectively, getting it done off the bench. In terms of overall, they had 47 points, 45 points off the bench essentially. Pretty good showing when you put up 77 points. With that being said, in terms of these week's matchups, as I kind of teased out, Drew, men's or women's, what are you thinking about on these matchups? What do you keep your eyes on for yourself?
I hate to say this. Bethune-Jackson State on the women's side. Thank God for Bethune women, because at least somebody is in the basketball business in the state of Florida. Because this show is not.
Oh my!
It's not definitely not in Tallahassee right now. But them traveling to Jackson State on Saturday. That's going to be the one for me. Jackson State coming off of the blowout victory over Texas Southern. Bethune coming off a close victory at home against UAPB. It's going to be interesting. Jackson State won big on the road. Bethune squeak one out at the house. Both of them sit at 4-1 in the standings. So that's going to be the one that's going to that I really want to see how it turns out. Because right now, everybody's, I hate to say this, Charles, but everybody's chasing Prairie View on the women's side. Not used to people not chasing Jackson State. So Jackson State going from the hunted to the hunter.
You might not want to see
Yeah, that's not a good position.
Yeah, I'm about to say.
Well, we saw how it started off on Monday night, but
it was probably better if you could see them in front of you. But if they're in a rearview mirror, that could be scary. So,
is that the one when you run the 4x1 and just hawk you down at the finish line when you start pulling up?
Yeah, it's better for you to be the hawker.
Yeah, I agree with you. Ooh, boy, you talking about dinosaurs?
But this really gonna tell us something about Bethune's women, whether they are pretenders.
Yeah, you get to see
not.
really how
Doesn't.
they are. I agree with you. This is the first major match.
They don't have, and they don't even have to win this game, but they need to be competitive
I agree.
in this game.
Yeah, I agree with you. They got to show that they can play with them, particularly being on the road. The least make that move. And as we said, in a lot of ways, what we really are looking for those 2, 3, 4, and 4 seeds. We still think Jackson is going to outclass everybody as the games kind of match on. Credit again to Prairie View. They got it done, which is huge. And it's one of those games that you may not expect to have. So it's one that you have in the hole where you can kind of maybe get some ammunition later. But I'm looking at 2, 3, and 4 spots. So this is big in terms of seeding purposes when you really try to make your run during the tournament to get the NCAA bid. Yes, Drew?
Hey, Charles, is Prairie View on the schedule twice, or is that the team that y'all played once this year? I'm just curious to see how.
No, they should be on twice. Yeah,
Okay.
Prairie View should be making a trip to
Yeah, they
Jackson.
played twice. They got to go to Jackson.
Okay, because if
they play.
I was gonna say, if this was the rotation year where they only played it once, that victory would have been huge when it comes to seeding. But Jackson does have his opportunity. Yeah, but Jackson State does have his opportunity.
And then you got the point differential when you play them twice like that. I know for Prairie View and Texas Southern, 2 of the teams they only play once are FAMU and Bethune-Cookman. They returned the trip. They went down there and played the one last year in terms of what that looks like on the matchup. Okay. Good stuff there. I did want to tease out this before we let it go. In terms of these really close games, in terms of that, people ask me about Prairie View in terms of their record sitting at 3-3. If you look at Prairie View in terms of top 5 matchups, where I'm starting to look at teams in terms of how they fare with other teams in the top 5, Prairie View, for example, when you look at something like that, they're 2-3 against the 5 teams that are ahead of them in the ranking, with the lone victory with Valley that sits at the bottom half of the conference. But in terms of the whole conference, I told you I would tell you just how good some of these games have been. If you break it down, 12 of the 32 games, or 37.5% of the SWAC games, have been decided by 6 points, essentially 2 possessions with the 3-point line or less. But a whopping 20 of the 32, or 62.5% of the SWAC games, have been decided by 9 points, 3 possessions or less. So more than half of the games have been, on the men's side, have been extremely competitive. So while you might see some gaps there, I'm not sure if anybody's going to quite run away with this race. And for anything in terms of you interested in wanting reasons why you want to see some of these games when they come on television, more than not, you're going to see some really well-played games in terms of the competitive balance of the conference. You already have 3 OT games, several buzzer beaters throughout the league, or at least last-second shots, leaving very little time on the clock. So very entertaining. Kudos to all the coaches in the conference and Charles in terms of the commissioner, that is Dr. Charles McCullough of the Southwest Southern Conference. As a couple of games will go down in the MEAC as we start, I'll do the same breakdown for the MEAC and see what those percentages are like and kind of compare that to see in terms of the competition and more so the competitiveness of the games that we're seeing, and we'll break it down for the women as well. I think it's a little bit of more of a spread there, but it's fascinating just to see what that looks like. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Bill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday, 6 o'clock right here. We look forward as we continue to give you the greatest news and up-to-date news in the HBCU sports culture. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta, that's Dr. KENYATTACAVIL on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's DR KENYATTACAVIL. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. HBCU Nightly on Wednesday. You can check me out on Twitter Spaces. I jump in there at times to give some updates on HBCU sports, particularly give some basketball talk from the SWAC perspective so people get some updates and see what's going on there. There's a lot of folks on that side share the MEAC, so it's very intriguing when you get into dialogue about what's going on as Herbert releases his top 5. So I always get to see what it looks like against the top 5 that we release right here on Dr. Biz Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. With that being said, you know what we say. Dream big. Continue to move forward. We'll talk with you soon. Charles.
Of course.
AD Drew.
Lecture.
Dismiss.
We'll holler.
Yes, indeed.